Thank you for joining our October coffee hour conversation. We look forward to sharing as many voices and opinions as possible over the next 60 minutes. And to begin with, some very brief introductions of our guests today, albeit too briefly. Firstly, I'd like to begin by welcoming Mara McEwin, who is the co-founder and artistic director of Treehouse Shakers Dance and Theatre Company. Mara has written, directed, sometimes acted in numerous performances for Treehouse Shakers, the last of which was commissioned by the Performing Arts Centre here at Purchase and was due to receive its premiere at the time of the COVID-19 shutdown. She's created ongoing arts programming for numerous school partners and is a former board member of IPAY, the International Performing Arts for Youth. Next, we have Ellie McKay, who is the Educational Director for the Children's Theatre Company in Minneapolis, Minnesota. CTC is one of the nation's largest and most acclaimed theatre for young people in the country and serves a multi-generational audience. Their engagement and learning programs annually serve more than 93,000 young people. And a particular welcome to Ellie, who I know has joined us from the West Coast, so thank you for working with our time frame. Kimberly Olsen is the Executive Director of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. For those who don't know, a grassroots service organization working to improve and advance the state of arts education across the 5 boroughs. As the leader of the organization, Kim works with a large network of New York City-based cultural organizations and arts educators to provide professional development, share resources, create community-led learning spaces, and advocate for arts education in schools and the communities. And finally, Alexis Truitt is the Managing Director of the American Alliance for Theatre and Education. Through its membership of theatre artists, in-service and pre-service teachers, professors, directors, scholars, and playwrights, AATE serves more than 1 million students in 48 US states and 19 countries worldwide. So welcome to them for joining us this morning. And to kick us off, Seth Soloway, who's the Director of the Performing Arts here at Performing Arts Centre here at Purchase College, who will guide us and take us through our conversation this morning. So Seth, over to you.
Awesome, as always, thank you, Ian. Good morning and welcome, everybody. An extra credit to Ellie for being on the West Coast. That's more than I could do. My name is Seth Soloway, he, him, his. I'm here at Purchase College on the stage of our concert hall, which is our largest hall at just under 1,400 seats. I'm wearing a striped shirt and a blue blazer that I haven't worn in about 8 months and was excited this morning to find my sunglasses in the pocket. So we're having a good day so far. We're thrilled to be here on the stage. Ian and I are more than appropriately socially distanced, which is why we have our masks off, and our wonderful tech team, Christy and Bennett, who were kind enough to set us up in here, set us up and then went down to their offices. So we're doing this completely safely so that we can come to you live from the theater. I only just took my mask off a second, and I am concerned, it's got this strap in the back, so I'm concerned that doing so has messed up my hair, but we're just gonna go ahead. So I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. And Ellie got up so early for us, I'm gonna start with her.
Seth, anything in particular or just a little bit about what I do?
Yeah, just a quick overview of what you do, anything that Ian didn't say that you wanna add.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm the Director of Education at Children's Theatre Company, like they said, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, although I'm currently based in Portland, Oregon, which is just one of the small silver linings of the pandemic for me, is that I was going to leave my job, and now I'm able to continue working remotely for the time being out of Portland. But the education programs at Children's Theatre Company are very robust. We have 4 main programs that we run. We have classes and camps where students interact with the theater to train in theater arts. We have a robust residency program, including the Neighborhood Bridges program, which is a year-long in-school critical literacy program. We have the creative play workshops, which supports local social service organizations working with young early learners that are experiencing trauma and crisis. And we have a student matinee program where students get to see our professional art on stage. And we've at this point moved all of those programs virtual, which has been a lot of work and exciting on only 2 education staff members at this point. So we have a lot to share, and I'm excited to hear what everyone else is offering today.
Thank you so much. Kimberly?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kim. I'm calling in today from Queens, New York. I am the Executive Director of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. I am a white 20-something female. My hair is brown to my shoulders. I'm also wearing my favorite red dress to try to bring some color to this gray New York City day. The Roundtable, as Ian said earlier, is a grassroots service organization. We serve a membership of over 100 cultural organizations and thousands of individual teaching artists across New York City. I'm thrilled to see some of our member organizations are on this call now. And in pre-COVID times, really our main activities were our professional development. We host the largest arts and education conference in New York State called Face to Face. In addition to hosting community learning spaces and sharing resources with our field, as Ian said, to improve and advance the state of arts education in New York City. However, with the COVID pandemic, as well as with the social uprising around racial injustices within our city and our country, the Roundtable has really pivoted and acted as the main convening body for New York City's arts and education community. What that's looked like is we now offer robust professional developments, that's 5 per month, for our community and how to pivot into teaching in this new landscape. We've also amped up our advocacy efforts as well to ensure that arts education is still alive and well in our schools. So thanks for having me and looking forward to our call today.
Great, thank you. Alexis.
Hi, I'm Alexis Truitt. I am calling you from Washington, D.C. I am the Managing Director of the American Alliance for Theater and Education. We are a member association who serves and supports 600 theater artists, educators, and scholars committed to transforming young people and communities through the theater arts. At the core of what we do, we provide professional development and networking opportunities for this community, which has looked a little different since March as we've had to pivot and take all of our connections and community building to online, which has also given us the opportunity to really expand our programming from like 2 to 3 offerings a year to probably like 5 or 6 a month now. So we're excited to see that growth and change and glad to be here today.
Thank you. And last but not least, Mara.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Mara McEwin. I'm the Artistic Director of Treehouse Shakers. I'm calling in from Queens, New York City as well. So hi, Kim. And I'm wearing a black dress that I haven't worn since March with polka dots, and I'm also very excited to wear clothing. So we are a arts organization that provides, we provide performances. We mix dance and theater together, and we do performances from babies all the way through teens. Pre-COVID, we had 6 shows on a rotating tour around the United States, and we were doing residencies within New York City and the tri-state area, primarily with performing arts centers and our teaching artists. Post-COVID, we, after March 13th, completely transitioned into an online virtual world, as many of you have, and we have partnered with schools throughout New York City, both public and private schools, as well as nursery schools to provide our arts and education programs. But then we also partnered with Broadway On Demand, providing our performances on a Saturday morning basis for families, as well as live performances, and after school programs and summer camps, which we actually hadn't been doing. We've been doing them in China. So to now offer them online has been just a world that has opened to us. We've also started creating a new work online called Pillow Fort, and they're going to be an 8-series webisode series. And we also have a baby show that we were in the middle of making, and we're still figuring out how, during a time of COVID, you create a work for babies that can be very intimate. So that will be our challenge for the next couple of years as we get back to a reality that is in person. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mara, and thank you, everyone. So as you can see, we have quite an amazing panel and more than we usually do. So I want to get right to it. And I'll just say something I usually say in the beginning, but neglected to say. If you've not been with us before, we really want to have a conversation. I'm not here to lead a webinar. We want to learn and share knowledge, and we get the topics from you. So we're trying to have conversations about what folks want to talk about. And replicate something we missed, something I missed with Mara or Emily or Josh or some of the other friends here that I see, where we would just sit and have a cup of coffee and talk about what's going on. That's really what we're here to do. My cup of coffee is enormous because I had a board meeting before this, so just bear with me if it doesn't fit in the screen. So I'm going to ask a lead-in question, and then I've got some other written questions, but after that first question, we'd love to hear from anyone. We'll immediately take questions from you. You can put it in the chat or raise your hand. So we're going to start with what the topic of the discussion is, and I'll invite any of our 4 panelists to jump right in. But we'd like to hear from each of you. How have you been working with the classroom, with students, with teachers, with parents during what's now the virtual classroom in most places during the crisis? And I want to put it in this context. I think it's helpful maybe if you have an example that you tried at the beginning that maybe didn't go so well, and what did you learn, and how have you adjusted to delivering programs successfully, which you're all doing now?
Seth, to
Thank you.
break the ice. I think that things that have changed for us is we've really realized that synchronous learning for our students and for our schools is the most important way to get the information out there. Although, unfortunately, because it's still a marketplace, when presenters come to us, they may need asynchronous learning, and they may need us to record some things to present with our work. But for us, really, we've had to figure out how best to include as many children as we can. We're still struggling with how do we reach underserved communities, which was really our prime audiences. So that's still, we're not getting to the kids that we need to. We're also reaching new kids. So for example, our after school programs are now reaching students in Arkansas and Kentucky and California and places that New York City kids, you know, obviously we didn't reach these kids before. So we're expanding our communities, but at the same time, I feel like we're also still struggling with leaving out part of the, you know, the inequities within the system as well.
Yeah, I can jump off of that because it's interesting that we've had a little bit of an opposite experience where one of the first things we decided when we were realizing we would have to move our programming online is that we didn't want to continue to replicate what's worked historically because we knew that online would be different. And so we started trying to make experimentations with our programming to lean into the technology and see what the technology could offer us. And so we developed a really successful synchronous education model over the summer that then as the schools started coming back and we started interacting with our classroom teachers about, you know, we've got great experience doing the synchronous learning. We'd love to Zoom into your classrooms. We'd love to Zoom into your organization. And we started doing some synchronous opportunities, and we were finding that families weren't logging in to those synchronous times. So we had to pivot to now we're developing asynchronous delivery, which is new to us. We've never done this. And we've actually only had our first one last week, and we have our second one coming out this week. For several of our organizations, especially the ones that have families that have limited access to bandwidth or technology is a concern for them, having an asynchronous option where they're able to utilize it at any time during their day, maybe on a less high traffic internet time for their family, has been really, really successful. So for example, we were able to just stream Corduroy, our production of Corduroy, and we just gave the link to our partner and told them they had X amount of views, which is our agreement with our unions. But then they had the highest engagement by sending that link out to their families than they've had with all of their synchronous learning opportunities that they've had. So that was a really exciting discovery for us, and is really making us rethink asynchronous as something that we weren't really pursuing.
Great, thank you.
I can go. Our perspective is slightly different because we're working with the teachers and the teaching artists versus the students directly. So AAT is structured in the fact that it has 8 networks, including professional theater, K-8, and high school. And so what we've really been doing is providing support groups and virtual game share workshops. Because it's a national organization, all the needs are different across the United States. So we're trying to find a way to kind of encompass and support people the best way we can, and we found this to be the most productive and helpful way for attendees to who come and need that moment. So.
Yeah, I think, Alexis, the same is true for the Roundtable. We are not a direct service organization to students. As Ian said earlier, we serve the teaching artists and the cultural organizations, and also do interact with New York City public school teachers as well. What we found is that as our school system and our culturals transitioned into this new COVID world, we saw a new landscape of arts education being born. And I think I used the word pivoted earlier, but it really was a pirouette, because I feel like so many people made this look easy and effortless, as we would with a pirouette, when really it took a lot of work and time to be able to bring these programs to our schools and our students and communities. So of course we're seeing challenges that pop up there, as my fellow panelists have said, around access to not only technology, but also to materials. But with that, we're seeing opportunity. We now have a totally new toolkit, and every teacher I talk to, whether in school or teaching artist, is saying they feel like a first-year teacher, myself included. I also am a teaching artist. So what the Roundtable has been doing is providing workforce training professional developments. We are looking at what are the hard skills that our teaching artists and that our teachers need to build going into this school year, so that they are then able to operate in this new world of arts education. So providing on Google Classroom workshops on that, providing workshops on trauma-informed best practices to bring into the classroom, because we know our students are experiencing a lot of trauma, as we all are going through this unique moment. So looking at this, of course, from my educator brain, as a learning opportunity, because I think the lessons and the techniques that we're using now will become integrated into this new frontier of arts education.
Great. Thank you all so much for that perspective. It's all really important, and I just want to echo, because it's something that's come up in almost every topic, what Kimberly just said, which is, I'm sorry, I keep saying Kimberly because that's what I'm reading here. What Kim said, which is, you know, this isn't a band-aid moment. We have to really make things that are lasting, that combine with the next moment. So that's really important. Since I don't have anything from the group right yet, I want to go to something that's very practical for a lot of us. So we have some artists on the call, and many of our colleagues on the call are representing present organizations, which artists have been, you know, and will be reliant on to help get their work out. So, and we're in a group with the different SUNY presenters, and we talk to a lot of presenters, and it's clear we all have different staffing and financial models than, you know, each other, and then producing organizations when we create work for young people. So we have to really marshal what resources we have for maximum impact. And I wonder, for any of the panelists, what advice you would have for presenters who are looking to really target their resources for maximum impact with their school partners. So for instance, is it better to go in a direction that's a deep relationship with one school? Should we be trying to, you know, broaden to as many schools as possible? I wonder what thoughts you have and what advice you might have for presenters.
I'll just jump in because I don't like an awkward silence. I think that for us, it's, you know, really going to the schools that you already had that relationship with first and foremost, and then branching out from there. We had a very interesting moment at the very beginning of the pandemic, which a school that had been working with us years earlier and had just only come to see a performance with their classes had requested that we bring, they weren't having kids show up to class, and they wanted us to provide one of our performances under the Tangle, which Emily Bunning, who's on this call, created. And so we definitely went to the schools that we work with first and then branched out from there. And I think that the most successful thing for us has been word of mouth from those schools, other schools reaching out to us. But I would say that in New York, as a company, we're still finding that like after school programs, we're still kind of finding our footing because the beginning of our school year for public schools was so a little bit wonky, to say that politely. And so, you know, schools and families are still trying to find their way within this school system.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. In talking with our member organizations, we found that over the summer, they started engaging in conversations with their longtime school partners to do a temperature check. And we're finding that schools in New York City at least fall into 3 buckets, where that first bucket is, don't even talk to us. We can't even consider this. We just have to get started. That second bucket is, we want to bring the arts into our schools. Talk to us in December, January. And that third bucket is, please come ASAP. We need support. We do not feel like we have enough teachers on staff. I should also say that this is informed where in New York City, cultural organizations not only enhance arts education for New York's 1.1 million students, but oftentimes they also fill the gap in arts instruction. So we know that there are schools who their only exposure to the arts are these partnerships with culturals throughout the city. I'll also say in terms of resources, we know many of our members are operating on skeleton crews of administrative staffs. And what we're finding is that organizations are building these habits of collaboration where, so for example, one of our members oftentimes has a out-of-school program for teens. We found that that member organization was then able to connect with 10 other member organizations across the city to create a virtual open house that then enables teens to come in and to learn about a bunch of different programs all at once. So rather than it feel like we're competing for the same audience or where it's a siloed program, we're finding people are pooling their resources together or trying to find ways to collaborate to best get their message out there and support their programs.
Great, thank you for that answer. So it's a great place. I want to draw you all out a little bit on advocacy, and Kim, I'm going to start with you just as I've been a little bit more familiar with yours, obviously being right here in the area. So I wonder what lessons you've learned of the battles in the New York City education system that might help us through your advocacy efforts, and likewise from Alexis, what have you learned through your advocacy efforts across the country, or Ellie in Minneapolis? What have you seen through that advocacy that maybe help us here go forward?
Sure thing. So we all know that arts education operates at that unique intersection of the cultural community and straddles our education system as well. And unfortunately here in New York City, the state of the budget, be as it were, really had a huge impact on both sectors and of course that intersection that we lie at. So we believe at the Roundtable we operate on 2 core values: that the arts are essential and that the arts should be a right for all New York City students. And with these budget cuts, we are seeing inequities. And of course, there will be PTAs that will be able to fundraise and to overcome those hurdles and be able to sustain these programs. But there are students who come from lower income communities, who may be BIPOC students, who may be students with disability, who will not be receiving the same services because they're not able to. What the Roundtable did is we mobilized our community. We gave our community tools and resources to be able to connect with their city council representative, in addition to posting on social media to show the value of arts in our schools. We have since continued our advocacy efforts and are right now really working to reshape the conversation of why arts are essential. So often we say folks outside of our community think, oh, the arts are great because look at this great show or look at this great photo, when really we all know that it's the process of getting there, that's the magic. And especially now, as our students need to experience joy, they need to connect with their communities, they need space to process the world around them, which is not only one of the pandemic, but of the racial inequities, that the arts do that inherently in an authentic way. So that's really where our efforts are at the moment, is reshaping that conversation and sharing it with our decision makers, both in government and at the Department of Education, to let them know why it's so important to invest in the arts at this moment.
And thank you for all those efforts. Alexis, what about the national perspective on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally, AATE has lobbied on Capitol Hill in March as part of Arts Advocacy Day, which is organized by the Americans for the Arts. So we are always a sponsor of that program because it's so important to ensure that theater lives in our programming, all arts, but theater, because that's where we're coming from, specifically in our curriculums and in what we do throughout the year. But currently, we're actually part of the coalition that is supporting the Be an Arts Hero, which is an intersectional grassroots campaign comprised of arts and culture workers, unions, and institutions in the United States. We're pushing the Senate to allocate proportionate relief to the Arts and Cultural Center. So I would love to share that link with everyone so that they can see what this program is that we're working on. I'm just putting it in the chat there. So yeah, that's where we are right now with our advocacy efforts. It's ongoing always.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone else have anything to add about advocacy before we move on to the next topic?
I'll just I'll echo what Kim was saying about the trauma-sensitive nature of arts education. We are really lucky that we've seen a lot of intersection and or we've been given from our partners in the social service area. They just look at our work all the time. They're like, do you know that theater education is just naturally trauma sensitive? And we were like, no, when they started giving us all of this information on that. So we're seeing that trauma sensitivity, we're especially in Minneapolis with the just layers of historical trauma around race in our city. We see that that's such a big issue, and that theater has this natural perspective taking experience and being able to highlight stories that haven't been told. And so we have been finding that moving into a space of talking about the arts in terms of trauma sensitivity, of racial justice, have been a good conversation opener that have made ahas for a lot of people who may not have seen the value of the arts before, both on the political front and in funders.
Thank you all. And I just want to draw attention. So in the chat, we're posting some of the ways that we can all be advocates, and Ian's posted this Be an Arts Hero, which is a great thing for anyone, but particularly the power of these larger presenting organizations to harness. So, I at first, I looked at it, you can tell your director, it's great to put out there. You're not fundraising for another organization. You're just using your organization's platform to be an advocate. So I encourage other directors to really look at that and any other options, but that's just one that we're well aware of here in Westchester, because our Arts Council, some of whom are on the call, did a great job of pushing it out and making sure that we were aware. So I'll keep going. And again, anyone wants to jump in, please just raise your hand, put it in the chat, we'll call on you. So Mara, I'm gonna go just a little specifically to you as artist, and just ask, what has it been like to create during this? What have the challenges been? Do you have a great success story you can share with us? Has it been about creating more than getting the work out, or a little of both?
It's so interesting. We went from being together all the time, creating, performing, eating together, sleeping in hotels together, to being isolated from each other. And so our company has really made an effort to stay connected as much as possible. We were rehearsing on Zoom, especially for our new baby piece, Flutter, but there's a lot of music within it. And anyone who knows, singing and creating sounds and being touchy-feely, you can't do that in Zoom. But we just tried our best. At the end of September, the COVID rules kind of changed here in New York City, and we could have five and then 6 in a rehearsal room, still not able to touch each other. We make dance. So that's, you know, you can't contact each other. So we haven't gone back to our other work in the rehearsal space. We're hoping that New York City stays at this level, which I'm not going to say one way or the other if it will, but and that we can continue to rehearse there. But what we found that when we were making Pillow Fort, which we just had to say, we're a children's media company right now, and we're making a children's show online that children can watch. And so that is not, you know, a community where you sit and watch with your community in a theater. And that's been very interesting. We created the whole thing beginning at the end of the summer, and we rehearsed it all through Zoom because each actor was being filmed separately. So the way it was written for COVID, and written for how we can go around the pandemic problems. And then we were able to have a studio space at the beginning of this month. And then we were able to film the first 3 episodes, and everything was, you know, we got the entire company tested. We stayed socially distanced as much as we could, despite a few times where, you know, maybe the puppeteer had to be behind another performer. But we stayed pretty much apart and wore a mask the whole time. And it was the first time we'd been together since March. It was pretty amazing. So that's, I think it's been successful. We haven't finished editing the film, but the film that I have seen from the shoot has turned out really well. So I'm excited, and we've been able to collaborate with multiple artists within the organization to really create this sweet piece.
Mara, just one quick follow-up to clarify. Was the piece an idea before COVID, or is it an idea born of COVID?
It's an idea born of COVID, because at this, you know, right before COVID, we had The Boy Who Grew Flowers, which was, we were lucky to have this commission from you, Seth. And that was about to hit its biggest tour in recent memory for Treehouse Shakers across the United States. So to have that suddenly, just like, we were so excited. We were just like, oh, we've worked so long. This tour had been put together for 4 years. And to have it go like that, instead of dwelling on the sadness of what that means, we had to dwell on what can we become. And for a while, it felt like we were just fishing and we're just waiting for someone to bite at our line. And then it became more and more a conversation within the company. If you have an idea of what we should do, one of our company members said, I've had this idea, and he brought it to us. And so we started creating it together. It was really a collaborative effort from the company.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that positive news. And we're not hearing much from the room, but I certainly hope that that everyone is feeling a little bit lifted and positive from the comments. So off of that, I want to go to, I know, you know, being here in New York, certainly from the work of Kim and Alexis, that there's a lot of collaboration that feels really new between artists and New York City organizations, sort of a, you know, more even more of a high tide raises all boats the feeling than ever. What are your thoughts on how we can, in this moment, develop more and robust and better collaborations?
Say, first and foremost, to make sure you're centering your teaching artists in the work. So often that as ideas are born or programs are born, it comes from the administrative level. And we have such a highly specialized, talented workforce in our teaching artists who, from a recent survey that we did, 95% of teaching artists are ready and eager to work in the field of arts education now and moving forward. Even after the pandemic, they are committed to this field. So I would say first and foremost, making sure that their voice is somehow involved in the conversation. And then also, I think it's just seeing if you have a similar entity to the Roundtable, whether it's your local arts council. I field questions from our membership on a daily basis asking me, hey, do you know somebody who is looking at their fee structure for teaching artists and asynchronous or pre-recorded content, or have you heard of somebody doing this? I think people are, what I'm finding that's very heartening is that people are more willing to take the time to meet with others and to try to dream in this moment, since we all are very much stuck in our physical spaces. But people I've found more often than not are very giving and generous with their time. So I'd say, like, ask, what's the worst that happens?
So I think for us, we definitely have always subsisted on partnerships. We're a national organization, but I'm the only employee, so in that way we're very small. So I rely on external support to help get some of the programming that's bigger out there. So yeah, so we've always done, we have one coming up in the winter of 2021, which is Playwriting for Everyone, and that's a collaboration with the Dramatists Guild, which we're super excited about. So I think it's, for us, it's about finding the programming that is interesting to our members or needed or relevant, and then finding that particular partnership. And to Kim's point, everyone is being very gracious right now who would want to kind of go in on that kind of collaboration. Also, I have an amazing board of 15 members who are well connected and artists in their own right and administrators. And so I look to them to help connect me to the partnerships that we need in order to succeed in what we're doing.
And I think, oh, Ellie, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with Kim on asking, and I was going to say also asking your partners what they're interested in, because I think that was one of the biggest things for us this fall as we were going back to our schools, just saying, how are you? What do you need right now? And not assuming that what they need now is what they needed last year, or, you know, we've had relationships that have been years and years and years long. And for the first time ever, they're saying they need something completely different than what they've had, and figuring out a way to meet them where they're at, or assuming that synchronous will be what they want because that's most like what we've had before. So we just had such great outcomes. A huge success for us is we've been working with a crisis nursery, where students or young people are being dropped off for up to 72 hours while their families negotiate a crisis. And we have had a long time relationship with this nursery where we send in a teaching artist. And only in the last couple of years have we been really thinking, like, is that just more traumatic for them to have this other person that they don't know enter this space and then leave? And we've been talking a lot about how trauma sensitive it really is. And now we have the opportunity to create asynchronous learning models for them that their staff can use whenever they want instead of at the assigned time. And so we just had this big aha, being like, oh, this is actually better for you overall because of where we're at. So asking those questions, both of your teaching artists and your partners and your young people.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I think to what Alexis said earlier made me think, so something organic that happened within our New York City community is that several directors of education or executive directors of arts education organizations just put a time on their calendar. It at first was once a week. It's now shifted to once every other week, where it is an open space for folks to come in and ask questions or to share challenges or successes that they're having. It's very unstructured, but we found that it's been a critical moment for organizations to make those connections, but also to think of questions that they might not even have had themselves. On top of that as well, an offshoot of it has been that that group now has a Slack channel where they could quickly pop in one simple question, then get an answer from maybe one of 50 different organizations. And that group also keeps a core document so that, say you miss one of those meetings, somebody took a few quick notes, copied whatever links were shared so that you're able then to refer back to it. So again, how are we collaborating? How are we sharing information in this moment? Has been another great tool our community has leaned on.
Great. That's a great conversation. Thank you. And I just want to underline, because we have several folks from local arts councils here on the call, and I would welcome Jesse or Alicia or any of them to speak to this specifically, but I can't say enough how much our local arts council and the support organizations, we're lucky enough to have a lot close to New York City, like the Roundtable and others, have really been a great gathering place for thought. So I certainly encourage folks to seek out those organizations. And again, there if anyone representing an Arts Council wants to jump in, please feel free, because we're lucky to have quite a few on the call today. Nope, it's because the panelists are too good. So, well, I'll just move on with my written questions here. Well, actually, I have something just from across the room that I think is interesting. So, you know, we're here in an educational institution, and even us, you know, just this semester have gotten used to this idea of asynchronous learning models. So I wonder if any of you just can briefly help us all understand a little bit more what that means and what opportunities has it presented.
Yeah, I can talk. You know, we're just moving into asynchronous, and so it's still very experimental for us. We have a couple different ways we do it. One, we have our Early Bridges program, which is a critical literacy program for early learners, and that has been an exciting thing to move into. It's been something that I've actually been thinking about for a long time as something that felt like it could move into some sort of, I didn't know the word asynchronous at the time, but into an asynchronous model. And it's designed to be about an hour-long lesson. And what we have found really successful is chunking that out into smaller pieces of the lesson. One, because our partner sites are then able to choose throughout the day where they put those chunks. If they want to only put one chunk into their lesson for the day, repeat it, because we know that's really good for early learners is repetition. Also, it allows for a little bit of a mix and match of things. So we know that the lesson will always have mindfulness activities first. We know that the lesson will have an oral storytelling second. And we know the lesson will have activities to investigate that story further. And so it allows us to kind of have a menu of things now that we can pull from. And it also allows for an opportunity for kind of a PD model if we want to just send it to people so that the teachers can then replicate it in their own space. The other thing we've done in asynchronous is we actually, earlier this month, it was just announced that we are one of Flipgrid's new partners, if you're familiar with Flipgrid. And so what that means for us is that we're able to just put a whole bunch of our content. Sometimes that's videos that we've created as an institution. Sometimes that's little activities that we just film for ourselves. And then we're able to put that into what they call their discovery library, and anyone in the world can access our content. And so that's been fun to figure out what works, what things are people most gravitating towards. We've had over 350 classrooms since October 8th around the world and interact with our stuff, people that we've never met. And we're able to track what's calling to them. What do they like? What's working?
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to move to something that's come up a few times and address it specifically. So we all understand that alongside with these twin pandemics, the year has revealed real cracks in access, representation, and equity of all constituents, both in education and in the arts sectors more broadly. So I want to ask, that again, try to point us in a positive direction. In what ways have the twin pandemics of the moment, the health scare and the social justice challenges of our country, play into the work that you're doing, either as a creator, as an artist, or as an administrator, both at the moment, and how are you thinking about it in the future? Or to what extent should the conversation be direct within the virtual classroom, within either the school day, post-school, extracurricular type environments? That was a long question, I know.
I think I'll just jump in to say that I hope that this moment in our time helps us kind of reevaluate, and this is a good time to shift the whole system. And I feel very strongly that we can do that in small little ways that do shift the bigger picture. I feel for us, one of the first things, our after school program, I love this after school program we created with one of our education coordinator came up with this idea, and I think it's fabulous. taking fairy tales from around the world and shifting them to the narrative of middle school students. So they get to see themselves, whether it be race, gender, whatever it is, and to see themselves in the roles of these stories that they've known for a very long time and retelling them. So shifting their own personal narrative. That's been a really powerful class. And I think this kind of work, seeing ourselves creating new work is really important for our young people. I also think, you know, as far as performers who cast, our company is a diverse company, but I don't think you can sit on your laurels. You have to keep pushing. How do we change? How do we fight? How do we integrate every part of anti-racism within our work? And I think we just have not stopped having the conversation. It's been hard conversations. We've been really pushing ourselves. We've been really challenging ourselves. I know for myself, I've been constantly reflecting upon the system, constantly reflecting on the work that we do and how are we putting it out and how is it being presented. I don't know if I answered the question. I'm now rambling.
It's okay, you gave your answer.
I definitely, Mara said some really great things that sparked my thoughts. So AATE has really taken a hard look at itself, and we're working towards becoming an anti-racist organization, which as a woman of color, I'm very excited about, all these shifts and changes that are happening. And one of the key things, and it actually was planned for earlier in the year to be paired with our conference that we ended up turning virtual. So therefore we actually removed it from our offerings. We're offering a Leaders of Color Institute, and now seems like the right time for that to happen. So I'm actually glad it did not happen before. It's going to be keynoted. It's a 2-day event, November 7th and November 14th, 2 Saturdays. One keynote is by Michael Bobbitt, and the other one will be by Stephanie Barra. And we have an incredible, and I'm again sharing in the chat the link to the page, an incredible lineup of presenters to really talk about these topics. And this is solely created for people of color, by people of color. And we're looking to make this an annual event. So I feel like this is a really key movement in the direction we really want to go. So I'm very excited about it.
Alexis, those 2 keynotes are so exciting. And I'll just highlight that the TYA USA webinars on anti-racism have been incredible. So if anyone hasn't had an opportunity to join those, they are still ongoing. It's free to register. It's an 11-part series, and both Michael and Stephanie presented on those in ways that were incredible. So I highly recommend that. And additionally, just, I'm sure many of you are aware of this document, but just to lift up the We See White American Theater document, I think is a really incredible document that informs so much of how Children's Theater Company is moving forward right now. And I'll just echo that we as an institution are taking a long, hard look at ourselves. But I think the other thing that I'm really inspired by right now is we have seen a huge shift through online programming that kids are being, I would just say there's like a democratization of art right now, because the ways in which our education programming has shifted, the students that we're working with, they don't see themselves as needing the institution of the theater in order to make the art. They don't need the stage to make the art. They can make the art in their house. They can make the art with their family. That's been like amazing, is watching, you know, them bring in siblings and adults in their household to create with. And then giving a lot of artistic opportunity to our students and seeing what they're creating, what's sparking for them. And I mean, you cannot take justice out of kids. They know it's there, they want it, they sense it, and they fuel from it. And so we've been having a lot of moments, like we're having a talk back for one of our streaming shows, Last Stop on Market Street, coming up. And we're not planning the talk back. Actually, tomorrow I get to sit with a group of 4 kids that were in that show to say, what do you think a talk back should be? And they're going to plan the whole thing. And I think that's what's another really exciting opportunity right now, is to put those artistic decisions in the hands of our youth.
From the Roundtable's perspective, the Roundtable is an anti-racist organization. We have been hosting professional developments on how to bring equity and inclusion into your organization and classroom for about the last 5 years now. But in this moment, we are, as an organization, looking at how is white supremacy permeated within our organization, and what revisions do we need to make to our hiring practices, our bylaws, to how we're tracking our budget in order to ensure that we are investing in equity within our community and within our organization. From a programmatic standpoint, since June, the Roundtable has been hosting bi-weekly affinity groups, which are seeing participation of around 100 to 150 folks per week. So we have a white affinity group, a Black affinity group, and a non-Black POC affinity group. These groups also come together so that we are working towards dismantling white supremacy within our own lives, as well as also in our organizations. I'll also share that we are really leaning into providing professional development that's around culturally responsive pedagogy, which is the idea that you honor and bring the cultures of the students in the room into your curriculum. So as opposed to maybe teaching a curriculum that's based on a white-centric perspective or has white-centric characters, you're really acknowledging what the unique experiences the students bring, and infusing that and using that to inform your curriculum, and to sustain that moving forward as well.
Great. Thank you all so much. What a awe-inspiring panel this has been. I have to tell you that I had about 18 pre-written questions, and you've answered them all in about 6 questions. You've given us great information. I'm sorry we didn't hear from the floor, but I think it was just that overstuffed. So I am going to wind us up with 2 last questions that anyone can weigh in on. And Ellie, in particular, you sort of already answered this first one, which doesn't mean you can't chime in some more. But so, what makes you hopeful for the future of the field that you see right now?
I also recommend the TYA USA anti-racism. It's been very hopeful seeing so many people just take this moment and really challenge themselves and really look at themselves and each other, and how do we support each other in getting forward? How do we move this moment? We could come back onto the other side of this with live performances in a very different look. And that's how do we get there together? And that's been really exciting as an artist to see so many artists working together, and presenters and agencies kind of working on building an anti-racism community.
Thank you, Mara. So here's the last question. Given that we're here on a college campus, many of us are, and I think we all would agree that a big part of our strong comeback involves being joined by the next generation of makers, the next generation of arts administrators. So what advice would you give to our Purchase College students as they prepare to enter the field in this moment? They didn't know that one was coming, so give them a sec.
So many ways to answer this question, but I'm working with a cohort of up-and-coming teaching artists right now. And one of the things that we return to over and over again is just figuring out specifically what you want to contribute and what you don't want to contribute, and who you want to contribute to and who you don't want to contribute to. I think that especially as young teaching artists, we want to say yes to everything, and figuring out what value we add, and the kind of organization and philosophy that we want to be part of is really important.
Thank you, Ellie. Anybody else? Last call. Kim?
I think for me, it's each of us has that moment where the arts sparked something in it, and that's why we do what we do. I think if we didn't, none of us would be sitting here, because it's a field you have to love what you're doing in order to be able to continue to work in it. So I think just having those students sit with, like, what was that moment for you that sparked this love and joy and passion that you have for the arts, and to make sure that that's centered in all of your work moving forward is really what's been guiding me at the moment.
Thank you, Mara.
I just want to add like one tiny thing, and that is the arts are hard, right? And so you can't give up. That's my biggest piece of advice is when you're doing the work and people are naysayers to you, you have to be stubborn and just say, well, I can't really hear you right now because I'm focused on succeeding. So they have to be stubborn and insist upon their own success.
I totally agree with that. And I think also build your network, build your community, and just rely on them and know that they're there to support you through the tough times that Mara indicates, and believe in yourself.
Great. Thank you all. Well, this was a great conversation. I know we here really enjoyed it. We'll be back with another next month. And as I said, we do take the topics from you. So please feel free to write to Ian, and he's put his email in the chat and make some questions. He's nice enough to take all the emails. I want to thank the entire team here at the Performing Arts Center, every single person on the staff, whether you were physically here today and did something or you're working remotely. Everything you're doing matters, and your work made the space for us to do this. So thank you. I want to thank everyone who joined us to have a conversation. I think it's the most important thing we can do right now. And I want to thank this amazing panel. I learned a lot, and I'm truly, truly honored to have been with you. And I'm going to give it back to Ian.
Yes, thanks everybody. And these conversations, they don't just take place now. We're going to be sharing this with students that we're working with, and also on our website. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. And I'm going to be following up with an email next 24 hours or so, and I'll include some of the links, probably all the links actually, that we put in the chat today, and also a survey. So if you have any responses, please offer them in that survey. So thanks everybody, and thanks for coming. I hope you'll join us for our next conversation later in the year. Have a great day.